Ready for another mindful moment?
Absolutely. Always ready for a good deep dive.
Well, today
What are we looking at?
we are cracking open one of the most influential books ever written,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species.
It's a classic.
It is, and
Yeah.
we're going to extract the core insights that still ripple through science and culture today.
Yeah.
And trust me,
Okay.
some of these ideas might just shake up your worldview.
It's true. It's a book that truly revolutionized how we understand life on Earth,
Absolutely.
our own included.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that Darwin wasn't working in a vacuum. The concept of evolution, it wasn't entirely new.
It wasn't.
So there were whispers of it already circulating.
Yeah.
What was it about Darwin's approach that made it stick when others like Professor Haldeman
Right. Yeah.
or the anonymous author of Vestiges of Creation
Yeah.
failed to gain lasting traction?
Those earlier works,
Yeah.
while intriguing, lacked the scientific rigor to truly explain the complexity we see in nature.
Yeah.
They couldn't quite answer the how behind adaptations.
The how.
Yeah, think about the woodpecker.
Okay.
That perfectly engineered head for hammering into trees.
Oh, yeah.
How could such a specialized creature possibly have arisen through gradual change?
Yeah.
That was the challenge.
That's a big one.
Darwin tackled head on.
Okay, so let's unpack Darwin's two big ideas.
Okay.
Ideas that were nothing short of revolutionary at the time.
Yeah.
So what was the first one?
First, we have descent with modification.
Descent with modification.
Darwin argued that species aren't fixed, but rather they descend from common ancestors,
Okay.
gradually changing over vast stretches of time. He used a brilliant example.
Oh, yeah.
Domesticated pigeons.
Pigeons, seriously.
Seriously, think about the wild variety in pigeon breeds.
Okay.
The pouters with their inflated chests.
Uh-huh.
The fantails with their elaborate plumage. The tumblers that practically do somersaults in the air.
Wow.
Darwin argued that all this diversity stemmed from the humble rock pigeon,
Okay.
shaped over generations by breeders selecting for specific traits.
Okay, so they're...
What's even more telling is that if you crossbred these fancy pigeons, sometimes those ancestral traits, like the blue bar pattern, would suddenly reappear even if they were absent in the parents.
Really?
It's like these ancestral blueprints were hidden in their genes, just waiting to reemerge.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It really drives home the point that even with all these variations, they're still fundamentally connected.
Exactly.
All part of the same family tree.
Exactly. And this leads us to Darwin's second big idea.
Okay, what's that?
Natural selection.
Natural selection.
Just like a breeder selects for desirable traits, nature itself acts as a filter.
Okay.
More individuals are born than can survive,
Right.
creating a struggle for existence.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Those with traits that give them an edge.
Like what?
Better camouflage, faster speed, more efficient foraging.
Okay.
They're more likely to survive,
Right.
reproduce, and pass those advantageous traits on to their offspring.
So it was not just random chance.
Right.
But this constant pressure, this selection process, that shapes species over time. But doesn't that imply a sense of direction or purpose in evolution?
That's a common misconception.
Okay.
Natural selection isn't goal-oriented.
Right.
There's no grand plan.
Okay.
It's about the interaction between organisms and their environment.
Gotcha.
Those best suited to the current conditions thrive and reproduce, while others may struggle.
Yeah.
And over time, these small incremental changes can lead to entirely new species.
So it's a pretty radical shift from seeing species as fixed and unchanging.
It is.
I can imagine that these ideas caused quite a stir back in Darwin's day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges to Darwin's theory was the question of complex organs.
Yeah.
Like the human eye, critics argue.
What did they say?
How could something so intricate, so perfectly designed, possibly evolve gradually?
Right. It's hard to imagine half an eye being useful.
That's where the power of immense timescales comes in.
Okay.
Darwin argued that even tiny, seemingly insignificant changes, accumulating over countless generations, could lead to remarkable transformations.
Wow.
He pointed to examples of transitional states in organs.
Okay.
For instance, the swim bladder, which helps fish control their buoyancy,
Right.
could have gradually evolved into the lungs we see in land animals.
Oh, wow.
What started as a simple sac for buoyancy becomes, over eons, an organ for breathing air.
It's like looking at a complex machine and realizing it wasn't built all at once, but assembled piece by piece.
Exactly.
Each step serving a function along the way.
Exactly. Darwin was a master observer.
He was.
And he packed On the Origin of Species with real-world examples to support his claims.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give me an example that would have really blown people's minds back then.
Let's talk about flatfish.
Okay.
Creatures like flounder or halibut. You know, the ones that swim sideways with both eyes on one side of their head?
Yeah, it's totally bizarre.
Right.
It's like someone flipped them over.
Darwin argued that this peculiar adaptation evolved gradually, driven by the advantages of lying flat on the seafloor for camouflage and ambush predation.
Smart.
But the question is, how did their eyes end up on one side?
Yeah, how did they?
Darwin highlighted the work of a naturalist named Malm, who observed that young flatfish often rest on one side.
Oh, really?
Even before their eyes have fully migrated.
Interesting.
During this stage, their skulls are still malleable, and this habitual behavior could actually shape their development.
So their lifestyle, constantly lying on one side, is literally molding their anatomy.
Pretty much.
That's wild.
And as they grow, this tendency becomes more pronounced, leading to the remarkable transformation we see in adult flatfish.
Okay, that's one for the Evolution is Incredible file.
Absolutely.
What other examples did Darwin use to make his case?
He also delved into the world of blind cave creatures.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Animals that live in perpetual darkness and have lost their sight over generations.
Oh.
Darwin saw this as a powerful example of disuse.
Okay.
If a trait isn't essential for survival, it can gradually diminish.
So use it or lose it applies to evolution too.
It's a simplification,
Okay.
but it captures the essence.
Okay.
What's even more fascinating is that this loss of sight isn't always permanent.
Really?
Darwin cited a study where blind cave rats, after being exposed to light, actually regained some degree of vision.
Wow, that's crazy.
It suggests that the potential for those traits can linger in the genes, even if they're not expressed.
That's mind-blowing.
It is pretty amazing.
It's like their evolutionary history is still present, even if it's hidden.
Right.
What else did Darwin have up his sleeve?
Let's talk about rudimentary organs.
Okay.
Those intriguing remnants of evolutionary history that no longer serve their original purpose. They're like whispers from our ancestors, hinting at the pathways life has taken.
Rudimentary organs.
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Think about the stump of a tail that some tailless dog breeds have.
Oh, yeah.
Or the tiny horns that can reappear in hornless cattle.
Right.
Especially in young animals. These seemingly useless features tell a story.
What do they tell us?
They're leftovers from ancestors, where those traits were functional.
Interesting.
They provide compelling evidence for descent with modification. The idea that species are constantly changing and evolving.
Okay, that's a great place to stop for now.
All right.
But before we do, I have to ask.
It really makes you wonder if Darwin could drop in on us now. What would he make of all the scientific advances we've made?
I know, right?
Especially in genetics and molecular biology.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What would he be most excited to study, do you think?
You know, I was just thinking the same thing. Imagine Darwin with access to all the tools of modern science.
I know.
It'd be like giving Shakespeare a laptop.
Exactly.
He could delve into those intricate mechanisms of inheritance he could only theorize about.
He could study the vast genetic diversity within and between species, something he could only observe at a surface level.
Right.
And with modern technology, he could trace the evolutionary pathways of life with incredible precision.
Speaking of which, you mentioned genetic diversity.
Yes.
Why is that so important to understanding evolution?
Well, think of it this way. Genetic diversity is the fuel for evolution. It's the raw material that natural selection acts upon. The more variation there is within a population, the greater the chances are that some individuals will have traits that help them survive and reproduce when the environment changes. It's like having a bigger toolbox. More options to work with.
So a population with more genetic diversity is more adaptable and resilient.
Precisely.
Makes sense.
Darwin would be fascinated to see how modern genetics has revealed the astonishing extent of this diversity. Even within populations that look very similar.
Back to Darwin dropping into a modern lab.
Okay.
You mentioned he'd be keen to study the evolutionary pathways of life.
Right.
What does that even mean?
Well, Darwin was already a master at piecing together evolutionary histories, figuring out how different species are related to each other.
Right.
But with molecular biology, he could take this to a whole new level.
Wow.
He could analyze DNA sequences, compare genomes from different species, and construct these incredibly detailed phylogenetic trees.
Phylogenetic trees?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with those.
Imagine a massive family tree, but instead of showing individuals, it shows how species are related through time. Like a family photo album of life on Earth.
I like that.
By using molecular data, scientists can figure out when different lineages diverged and how closely they're related.
So it's like tracing the branches of the tree of life all the way back to its roots.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool.
And Darwin would be ecstatic to explore this tree in such detail, uncovering the hidden connections and seeing how his own theories hold up in light of this newer evidence.
I can only imagine the look on his face. But shifting gears a bit, Darwin's ideas obviously revolutionized biology.
They did.
But they also had a huge impact on how we view ourselves as humans.
Absolutely. By showing that we share a common ancestry with all other life forms, Darwin really challenged the traditional view that humans were separate from and superior to nature. Suddenly, we were part of this grand evolutionary saga shaped by the same forces as every other species.
It's a humbling realization.
It is.
But also kind of unifying, don't you think?
Absolutely.
To know that we're all connected in this way.
And it raises all sorts of interesting questions about human consciousness, morality, and our relationship to the natural world.
For sure.
Questions that philosophers and ethicists are still grappling with today.
So Darwin didn't just shake up the scientific world?
Nope.
He shook up the philosophical world as well.
He really did. And his work continues to spark debate and inspire new ways of thinking about our place in the universe.
But even today, over 150 years after On the Origin of Species was published, some of Darwin's ideas are still considered controversial, right?
Of course. Darwin's theories, particularly the concept of natural selection, can be tough to reconcile with certain religious or philosophical beliefs. Some people find it hard to accept the idea that a process driven by chance and natural laws could produce the incredible diversity and complexity of life.
It can be hard to wrap your head around. So how do scientists navigate those potentially sensitive areas?
Well, it's important to approach these discussions with respect and understanding for different viewpoints. Science and religion often address different aspects of the human experience. Science focuses on understanding the natural world through observation and experimentation, while religion deals with questions of meaning, purpose, and values. They aren't necessarily in conflict, but offer different ways of seeing the world.
So it's about recognizing that there are multiple perspectives.
Exactly.
And not trying to force one to fit into the framework of the other.
Exactly. It's also worth noting that many people find ways to integrate their scientific understanding of evolution with their religious faith. Acceptance of Darwin's theories doesn't necessarily require abandoning one's spiritual beliefs.
That makes sense. So as we start to wrap up our deep dive into Darwin's world, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
For me, the most powerful message from Darwin's work is the incredible interconnectedness of all life on Earth. We're all part of this vast, awe-inspiring evolutionary tapestry, descended from common ancestors and shaped by the same forces of nature.
And that realization comes with the responsibility to understand and protect the natural world, right?
Absolutely. Recognizing our place in this grand scheme should inspire us to appreciate the intricate web of life and act as responsible stewards of our planet.
Okay, that's a perfect note to end on. But before we do, it's amazing how, even after all this time, Darwin's ideas still have this power to make us completely rethink our place in the universe.
It's true.
You know, it's like he handed us this new lens through which to see the world, and everything looks different.
And that's the mark of a truly revolutionary thinker. Someone who changes not just what we know, but how we know it.
Oh, so true. So to our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive into Darwin's world has sparked some new ideas and maybe even a few aha moments.
Definitely.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated most with you?
Yeah, what really stood out?
What questions are still swirling around in your mind?
Here's a final thought to ponder. If Darwin were alive today, what aspects of modern science do you think he'd find most challenging, maybe even unsettling?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What discoveries might make him question his own assumptions about life and evolution.
You know, for someone who was so ahead of his time, I wonder what he'd make of things like gene editing, artificial intelligence, or even the search for extraterrestrial life.
It really makes you realize that the quest for understanding is never truly finished.
Right.
There's always more to discover, more to question, more to learn.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The journey never ends.
Precisely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this mindful moment with the deep dive. See you next time.
There's a link to buy the book in the episode description. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share it with anyone who loves exploring ideas. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those minds curious and engaged.